I am here on the set of The Chosen
Wow.
with Dave Ferguson. Here we are. Dave Ferguson, of course, pastor, Community Christian Church, global network leader with New Thing and more. Dave, we both used to live in Chicagoland, and I've always noticed that I've told you so many times.
Dude, I still live in
you
Chicago.
Still live in Chicago. That's
you,
true. That is
you
true.
abandoned me for
that is true.
sunny.
I am now living in California,
That's
serving at the Talbot School of Theology. But I've told you before that I run into people all the time that your church is engaging non-Christians who even think of your church as their church, as they're considering what it means to be a Christian, or as you say there, finding their way back. So talk to me a little bit, because now we've got this just an explosion of media. We've got the He Gets Us campaign. We had movies. And The Chosen has just sort of taken off in so many ways. You're engaging people who don't know the Lord. Are media opportunities like The Chosen a gospel opportunity for a bridge to people who don't know the Lord?
I absolutely think so.
Yeah.
I think things like He Gets Us or The Chosen probably appeal to different segments.
Yeah, probably true.
Of audience.
Yeah.
And what was the back?
When we were at the White Sox game.
Well, I would say your Wheaton days, the Ingle scale.
Yeah, the Ingle scale.
So the Ingle scale, which kind of says where people are as I would say, finding their way back to God.
Right, sure.
I think probably He Gets Us appeals to a certain slice of that Ingle scale, and probably The Chosen appeals to a different slice. My hunch would be that, like He Gets Us, probably for those people who are probably further from God but curious about spiritual things, probably not agnostic or atheist, but curious about spiritual things, for them, that it's kind of like this PR campaign for Jesus, and just probably, I would anticipate pulling them a little closer this way. Just that even those simple commercials.
Helping them come closer.
Exactly right. Where The Chosen, I think, are probably for those people who are more maybe either side of being a Christian, kind of very nominal, but consider themselves religious, and probably a little closer. And I think that probably pulls them also closer to Jesus. So I think both of those are outstanding tools for helping people find their way back to God.
Can I tell you, as someone who's kind of been involved in the He Gets Us campaign, I love that you haven't been involved at that level, but you get what's going on.
Yeah.
And because, those ads are not geared towards Christians. They're geared towards non-Christians, whereas The Chosen is geared towards people who are going to take a journey with Jesus. Now, tell us, have you watched The Chosen?
Okay, true story.
True story.
I probably watched.
I feel like I should have asked that before.
You should have, but now we're going to embarrass me in front of them. But we'll go for it.
Yeah.
Keeping it real. So I watched the first few, and then I kind of maybe.
Yeah.
And my wife loved it. Same thing.
Same.
Okay, she loved it. And so, honest to goodness, so this summer, I took a sabbatical for the month of July, and I said, okay, I really want to focus on Jesus. And so there was a Dallas Willard book I read, and Sue was like, you really ought to watch.
Sue's your wife.
Yeah, my wife Sue said, you really ought to watch The Chosen. And so I did. I kind of binge watched.
Which is literally what Dallas Jenkins said. He wanted it to be a binge watchable series.
And I did. So every day I'd watch an episode through the month of July, and maybe, that's about right. And honest to goodness, I do feel like it gave me a greater love for Jesus. I think a greater appreciation for kind of His humanity.
Yeah.
There's certain scenes now even when I'm teaching or I'm hearing someone else teach, I kind of picture that in my brain. Yeah. So personally, I'm a pretty big fan.
Yeah, no, I like it. And this was not scripted. Of course, if you said something otherwise, it probably would have never been released.
That's probably true too.
But okay, so then. Right now, we're living a time and an age where a lot of people have given up on church, or some people, I said, maybe are considering or coming closer is language that we've used. How would you encourage pastors and church leaders to maybe use The Chosen and resources in and around The Chosen for people in their churches to reach people who are maybe outside or adjacent and open? Those people, the Engel scale, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is this scale it kind of looks at, you go from -8, no awareness of God, to -7. I don't have it memorized, but -7 might be awareness of God, -6 may, understand who Christ is, and eventually gets to a place of conversion. So people who are maybe not -7 on the Engel scale, but maybe they're -2 or -1. And how would you encourage people to use The Chosen as a tool?
At Community Christian Church, our context, so we have locations across the city and the suburbs of Chicago. I love it when our small groups actually use The Chosen, because I want to kind of explain that because in our experience, we have people who will actually join a group before they become a Christ follower.
Right. And that's part of your strategy. That's
it is a part of our strategy.
The blessed strategy.
And so I would say for folks that are on, like, so let's say if there was a line of demarcation where, hey, you cross the line of faith, you're saying yes to Jesus. I'd say people just on this side who are curious but not sure yet, and people who are maybe said yes but really want to grow, I think that is a sweet spot for them.
It makes perfect sense.
And so I would say, use it as use it in your small groups.
Well, and it's interesting too because really binge watchability is kind of a thing that Dallas has talked about all along. You literally are spending. I mean, you spent your July. You said you want to focus more on Jesus, and you ended up engaging the Gospels and the Gospel story and more through The Chosen. So an opportunity for people to come closer, to look more, to learn more, and ultimately we hope to take that next step of faith. And that's, I know, something you're passionate about as well. When you talk about the Bible, people talk about visiting Israel, and they'll say, now you see the Bible in color. But I saw someone say something similar about The Chosen, that having watched it, now they fill in some of the blanks, and part of that is, like you said, you remember things. Like I see Matthew in a whole different light now. Oh, my goodness. And it makes sense to me, but there's no biblical record that he would be on the spectrum.
No.
But it sure makes sense.
It does make sense.
So where, I mean, when those parts get filled in, they can get filled in with things that are certainly fictional representations. What Dallas talks about is we don't want to be contrary to, but we want to fill in some of the spots. How does that work for people on their Christian journey for you when those spots are filled in? Is that a plus? Is that a minus? Does that mean that's the only way you can think of it now? How does it work?
Oh, I think it's a plus. I mean, I think obviously you still want it to be grounded in Scripture and measured against Scripture.
Right.
But I think anything that pulls people into the life of Jesus and helps people think more about and even imagine more and contemplate more about Jesus and reflect on who they are, I think that's a positive thing. And I mean, some of those things too, I mean, like for me, thinking about this, I think, I can't remember which episode it was, but like when he winks.
Yes. Oh, that was like a famous thing. So,
but for me, because it's just this summer was my first time through the whole thing. It was kind of like, oh, of course he did.
And of course, Jesus can wink,
right? Yeah. And like him and with the disciples, it was like I don't know if I kind of got it, but like they were like friends.
Yeah, and that became more alive for you this summer.
Oh, absolutely for me, yeah. And like the Peter character. I mean, on the one hand, this is a guy who loved Jesus, was loyal to Jesus, would follow Jesus, do anything Jesus, but also there were sometimes he was just totally reckless.
Yeah.
And it fits, I think it totally fits the text. It fits the text. Sure. But I felt like it filled in some things for me that as I think about Peter, it was, I think, very helpful.
And I'm probably you as well. Like, I fill in the blanks on Peter once.
Of course we do.
We do. I mean, it's kind of a preacher
in some ways,
thing.
that's kind of a stupid thing to go like, oh, I don't know. I think they go too far.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're already doing it in our imagination.
Right.
And to have someone who spent some real time thinking through this in an artistic way is, I think, helpful.
Right. We have whole label. Doubting Thomas. We got brash Peter. We have kind of labels the way we think about these people, but allows us to go more deeply in depth. So what I'm interested in, we a lot of Christians have watched it. Your wife's a Christian and my wife's a Christian.
That's true.
And then they got us into The Chosen. And my wife loved it. And Mark Green said to me,
so how did she get you into it?
Well, so I'm not I have a high skepticism towards Christian film.
I hear you.
So with that high skepticism, Donna wanted to start watching it, and I was like, okay, fine. And that's great. I know, and this is like,
okay, fine.
And I know, I've met Dallas Jenkins. I know him. So so I wasn't. So anyway, so then I start doing some stuff with He Gets Us, and Mark Green, part of that whole conversation, and it comes up in the middle of we're having a meeting talking about some He Gets Us. Someone mentions The Chosen, and I'm like, yeah, I haven't watched that. And it was
you said it out loud.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Oh, wow.
See, that's the problem with that Stetzer. He says things out loud. So Mark says, what? And so Mark sends me a link. So you got to watch this. So I said to my wife, and she says, let's watch it together. So we start watching it, and it's super fun. We laughed together. We enjoyed together. There are a couple places where, like, this is the preacher in me, like, I would not have made that particular interpretation of that. But that was part of the fun is talking about that as well. And right now, I've actually, been texting. I've got a family member who is on the spectrum that I love very much. I've texted and said, "Hey, just watch the first episode. I want you to.
What's the intention there?
But see, because I want this person to see Matthew, because I think that, and and one of the things I love too, Dallas Jenkins has been very, very transparent about him being on the spectrum as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So so he's been public about that. So when every time I see Matthew, I think of a member of my family that I deeply love, and I think, oh, this would be great. I want that person.
What kind
to
see the way Jesus interacts with Matthew?
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. So good. Okay. So when you think about the cultural moment, let's move away from The Chosen, though I think we both kind of agree The Chosen kind of is a tool in this cultural
Absolutely.
moment. But in this cultural moment, people, and I guess it's not unique to this cultural moment. Our mutual friend Dan Kimball wrote a book 2 decades ago. They love Jesus, but not the church. Right? So how does this openness to Jesus relate to, because you and I we're pastors, right? So we want people to love the church. Matter of fact, we think you can't love Jesus and ignore his bride, the church.
Right.
So, but the openness to Jesus is much bigger than the openness to church in our cultural moment. What does that mean for us for the future? What does that mean for how we engage the culture and more?
Well, I mean, so I had a conversation with a couple marketing geniuses. One's a guy who writes for the Harvard Business Review. Another guy's one of the leading CMOs out in the Bay Area. Brilliant guys, and I couldn't afford to pay for them, but they were friends. One of them's a friend of mine, so they were like, "Hey, I'd like to spend a little time." And basically, we were talking about New Thing.
Yeah, New Thing is the network that you lead.
Yeah, so we plant churches all over the world, and we were having a hard time telling our story. And one of them is a really strong believer. One of them I'd say is a brand new, barely believer.
Right.
Okay. And as we're trying to explain how the importance of starting new churches, and like you're asking, like about churches and that being a priority, they paused and said, well, here's the deal. You guys are like the problem and the solution.
Interesting.
And I was like, what do you mean the problem and the solution? He said, well, churches and culturally are both the problem right now and the solution.
Interesting.
And they began to rattle off. And I've got headline after headline, whether it's the Catholic Church or evangelical churches or mega churches, all the stuff. And then they added this, which really kind of magnified and illuminated what they were saying. They said, it's like you guys are both the arsonist and the firefighter.
Wow.
And they said, what kind of church are you talking about starting?
Right.
And I think that's what we got right now. I think some people, on the one hand, you have churches that are going like, no, they create toxic cultures where large churches, some of them are known for, the pastors get paid way too much money. You have denominations that are in denial about certain things that are totally wrong. All the things we could list. So that's the problem. Or are you talking about that kind of church? Or are you talking about the kind of church where my uncle went to and that's how he got sober?
Wow.
Are you talking about the kind of church where my daughter and her husband went as young parents and it saved their marriage?
Wow.
Which kind of church are you talking about? And I think that's what the culture's asking, because I think they nailed it. We are both the problem and the solution.
And so much of that solution is more following and being shaped by Jesus.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I love that it keeps on back to that.
Yes.
You just started as a columnist at Outreach Magazine. We're excited to have you. Another one who started with you was Derwin Gray. And your column's awesome, but let me tell you about Derwin's column.
Let's hear it.
In Derwin's column, he starts with Gandhi.
Okay.
And that famous quote, they're so unlike their Christ, and I think that's a reminder for us. So I think it's a good thing that people in culture are watching The Chosen or maybe exploring who Jesus is from He Gets Us and more. But at the end of the day, that's also a challenge for us to develop Christ-like disciples in and through our churches.
And Christ-like churches.
And Christ-like churches. So last thing, our audience is pastors, church leaders, Christian leaders. What would you say to them to have shape a more Christ-like expression? The world is open to Jesus. How do we reflect more of who He is?
I think at some level, as leaders and as pastors, we are culture creators. And if you want the people in your churches to have great marriages, do the best you can, or go do the work, or get the counseling, get the therapy you need so that you have a good or great marriage. If you want the people in your church to be great parents, say no to a whole bunch of stuff that you need to say no to, so you can say yes to your kids and being a really good parent. If you want to have an evangelistic culture, actively engage with your neighbors. Whatever it is that you want to see reproduced in the life of your people, you are a culture creator. I had one leader tell me this. He says, you will get the culture you deserve. And I think that's true for church leaders. And I don't want to put all the burden on them, but a big burden, and that's what leadership is. And back to what you said too, we have to do, and which is what I was trying to do in July. Going, I love church. Like I like, me and
I'm
you.
a church guy.
I mean, but I'm talking about like the thinking about church.
Oh,
the
yeah.
strategy
Yeah,
about
sure.
church.
We've had these conversations.
Oh my gosh,
Sure,
I love it. I need to make sure that I love Jesus
Yeah, it's good.
more than I love kind of growing a church, planting churches, reproducing churches, leadership development, all that fun stuff. And I would challenge leaders with that.
And on the set of The Chosen, I love that The Chosen was part of you having a refocused time on Jesus in your sabbatical in July.
Yeah.
We're here at the set of The Chosen. Glue's actually helping us do these interviews and more. We're super excited about that. And that's a key part for connected ministry. That's what Glue does. But the reality is there's a whole lot of people that are disconnected. A lot of pastors experiencing disconnection. But at the same time, like in our hands, we have some of the most amazing connection means in the world. You do this through the New Thing Network. You've been passionate about this for years. How do we pastors, church leaders, Christians stay connected to one another in such a divided and disconnected time?
I think one of the things maybe that I've heard the folks at Glue say almost as much as anybody is that relationships are the catalyst for life change.
It's good.
Relationships are the catalyst for life change. I fundamentally believe that's true. I think that's what the church is. I think the church is relationships. It's a community at its core. That's what it really is. And yeah, I think people are lonely. And I think part of the cure for that is relationships, and that will create life change. And if I was going to say, hey, here's 2 things I would ask every pastor to do, I'd say number 1, join a small group. Yeah. I'm talking about, because you're telling everybody in your church to be in a small group. So last night, I was in a small group. Yep. I have a Tuesday night small group that meets at the Bole's house. These are not special people, except they're my friends, and I'm their friend, and that's awesome, and we take care of each other. And yeah, you know what? Honest to goodness, like sometimes, like yesterday, I worked whatever it was, a 10, 11-hour day, and I'm going, I don't feel like going to small group. But I go, and when I go, I'm glad I'm there. Yeah. And I know it's also good for me, but it's also good for the people in my church to know it.
Right. You can't lead what you won't live, and so you're showing people.
I think that's it. And the second thing I would challenge them with is I think also pastors, you need to be connected with other pastors in a local network. Yeah. And one of the things we found through New Thing is that when pastors get together and collaborate in a city or region like we were doing, like we are in Chicago, what we found is those pastors, they actually take better care of each other, so it's good for their health. But then they also, because they're on mission, they plant more churches together. Right. So if I was to challenge pastors, 2 things: join a local small group and find a way to get connected with other leaders in your city.
Yeah, and we're actually in an upcoming issue of Outreach Magazine, we're partnering with you, Exponential, to actually highlight some of what those networks look like at the local level and more. So excited to do that. Dave, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.